was crying. I was like transported. I was so just flattened. I was dumbfounded how it could be so accurate, so specific. Of the safest places in the world could be more dangerous or intense for certain people, just depending on where their energy. We just saw each other, a sand dune, and we're like totally magnetized toward each other because Pluto could be very intense and magnetic. If you change your location, you could change your destiny or change your life.
Have you ever traveled somewhere and thought, I could live here, even though you'd never been there before? What if that feeling wasn't completely random? Today's guest is Kim Mott. She traveled to more than 70 countries, worked in filmmaking and travel writing, and recently followed her own astrocartography map to Bourges in the heart of France. So today we are asking, can a place actually change your life? Kim, bonjour et bienvenue.
Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Deborah.
Thank you so much for accepting to come to the Feel Good French channel. I was so excited to meet you and get to myself as well, to get to know more about this topic that you are covering, which is a fairly new concept to me, and I guess to maybe the people who are going to discover us. I think a lot of people don't know about astrocartography, but when you are looking at moving to a new place, when you are feeling the pull towards a new country, a new territory, I think it's even if you are just curious, it's such an interesting tool or frame to look at things. Could you tell us for yourself, you traveled to more than 70 countries. Was there one place where you immediately felt I belong here?
Yes, and I started traveling very young. My family moved around a lot in the United States. So, I mean, I had 22 different homes before high school. And so I lived every time zone of the United States, in many states. And my parents just kept moving us. And I thought it was normal until I got to about junior high school. And everyone was like, why do your parents keep moving? So but I didn't realize that some people just stay in one place. So I have it kind of as a pattern in my, childhood that feels comfortable to try new places. And I started traveling actually by myself when I was 14 years old. I convinced my parents to let me go to Malaysia in Southeast Asia on a volunteer trip to an orphanage. And they said, okay, if you can raise all of the money, then you can get your own passport and everything, then you can go. They didn't think I would do it, but I spent the next year doing babysitting and washing cars and gardening and whatever I could do to earn money. And then I said, okay, it's time to go get my passport. And they were a bit shocked. But yeah, I'll even show you on my map what maybe attracted me there, which really changed my life. But yeah, it's something that I just have a passion for is traveling and learning about their cultures and just completely changing my context. I just feel it's not only fun and exciting, but it's really been a source of just growth for me, just as self-development and spiritually and all kinds of ways as well.
And when people ask you where you are from, what do you answer to this question?
Yeah, it's almost annoying as a question because then you have to share too many personal details. But usually I just say, I was born in Colorado. I moved when I was 9 months old, but for strangers, that's a good enough answer. But when you asked about my favorite place or place I felt at home, my first trip was to France. I mean, my first European trip was to France because I had always been a big Francophile. So when I was like 19 years old, I'd already been studying in school, American junior high and high school, learning French, bad French, I think. But yeah, it was always a place I really wanted to go. So it was the most magical experience to actually go there. And then over the years, I've traveled so many places, but I've had to realize that France is my favorite place. I think I wanted to be a bit different, like, oh, so many Americans love France. I wanted to pick something different, but it's the place I go to the most consistently that feels like a place I can recharge, a place that I feel connected to, and having not really had a home place before.
And how this francophilie, like the love for French culture, how did that manifest for you in your life as a young person? Like, was it the love for the language, the love for the landscape, the history? Like, what pulled you to France?
It was something completely unconscious at first. You have to choose a language in United States. So, most people were choosing Spanish because of Mexico being so close and it's very practical. They also offer like French and German, but immediately I wanted French. And the more I learned the language and the history, which they'll teach a bit about, and the culture, the more I fell in love. And it's really unique for a lot of Americans because our history is so short. Getting to see like, oh my God, they have castles everywhere. First of all, it's like magical to a young person, right? But then the food, and then later you start learning the layers behind the food and the wine, the terroir, and the appreciation for the specialty and where it comes from, what soil it's grown in. There's endless layers to explore. So I find that true for a lot of cultures, but the one I most resonate with.
You do love les châteaux because you said that you have this attraction toward la vallée de la Loire, the Loire Valley, and you are
Yes.
currently in Bourges. We are going back towards this chapter of your life after, but yeah, you are in, I think the kind of medieval historical area of France really attracts you the most, no?
Yes, where it's just all day, every day, you can see it around you.
Oh, nice. You are now astrocartographer. That's how I met you with your YouTube channel, and you do those consultation for one-to-one for people or for couple, and you have those wonderful videos that I will put the link on in the description. But before that, you are a very rich woman. You have a life. You had a life, and I don't know if you are still involved in some projects as a filmmaker. And as a travel writer, and how did your travels around the world eventually led you to discover astrocartography? Because I imagine that that came to you a little bit later in life, not you didn't discover it at the beginning of all your adventures. So can you tell us a little bit how did you bump into this astrocartography world?
Yes, yes. So again, I've traveled so much. One of the natural paths for me was travel writing because it was like, how do I pay for all these travels and that sort of thing. So in the early 2000s, I was doing that. I was very lucky because I didn't realize it was a very difficult field to get published in. So I just was submitting to editors and immediately was getting published in major magazines and newspapers in the US. And it even started to change because around that time, the internet was kind of new and social networking was just being invented on Facebook and these kind of things. And so YouTube was brand new as well, and I started making travel videos. And I wanted a good production quality because I've always really been a filmmaking kind of nerd or something. And so it caught the notice of some producers in New York. And so I got invited to be a travel expert on the Travel Channel. I would be on news, things all the time, live news when I lived in New York. And even like Katie Couric, who's really famous in the US, I was on her show to talk about, honeymoon travel and things like that. So it was a really fun period. But I realized I didn't really love being the person always the center of attention on camera. And I was always watching the film crews behind going, that looks so cool. So I ended up getting some opportunities to produce behind the scenes and work in production management and producing. So that went into TV, digital productions, and documentaries, but also eventually feature films. And I've worked with some of the world's biggest directors and actors and things. So it's been a really exciting journey that I've been on. It's a wild ride.
Yeah, you are quoting Martin Scorsese in your page. I saw that's pretty big. Yeah.
Yes, I was able to work with Martin. We call him Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, Matt Damon, all kinds of different amazing, hardworking, very professional filmmakers. So it was another opportunity for me to travel as well into different
Yeah.
places, some more glamorous than others. But working, because you're working sometimes 2 months, 6 months. In that case, where I worked with Martin Scorsese, it was on a film called Killers of the Flower Moon. That was my last big feature film that I worked on before kind of early retirement from that. So when you asked about how I found astrocartography, which we will describe because it's if you haven't heard of it, it's probably getting a little annoying that I'm not telling you yet, but it was amazing for me because I was raised very, very, very Christian, right? My family was really strict about it. We went to church 5 times a week. Something like, esoteric things or hidden knowledge or things like astrology, those were absolutely banned. But as I got older, I got very interested in those things. But astrology, I kind of was on the fence about, a little skeptical because I was like, you just see the things in the magazines. It seems like this could be true about anyone. Very vague and kind of silly to me it felt like.
That's
And
what a lot of, I think most of us feel about astrology. It's often, I think in the old days, there was this whole, it was a very respected discipline. But I think nowadays, as it's been popularized by those magazines, we tend to reduce it to those little bit kind of a vulgar shortcut that is,
yes,
but it's not that. I think
no,
it's way more,
it,
like way deeper than that.
it's actually very, very complex. And it's actually interesting because maybe the best way to even describe it is a language. Because when you have to learn all the parts of astrology, it is really like learning another language. So it's kind of fitting for your channel, I think, to talk about it as well. So I had an astrology reading in maybe around 2010, something like that, on a whim. And I was just curious. All I knew that it was that I had a Capricorn sun. That's when I went to sit down with him. It was back in the days when we do in-person meetings. I got shocked. I was crying. I was like transported. I was so just just flattened. I was dumbfounded how it could be so accurate, so specific. Things I haven't even told anyone before sometimes about inner things that I process. I was really shocked. And then toward the end of the session, which was maybe a little over 3 hours, something like that, he then opened up this map, a world map, and said, and you have your astrology around the world, and this is where your energy is showing up. And then he really hooked me as a traveler and explorer that way. So as he's zooming in on the map, I said, look to France, please. Let's see what's in France. The first one I want to think of. And I could see exactly why, after his description of the planets, I didn't know them at the time, of why I would be going there every single year of my life for the last years before that, well before I knew anything about the map. It often happens now with client readings where the client will get a confirmation of their own intuition or experience from the map. Sometimes that can surprise them, but sometimes they're like, oh, that explains so much because it's already natural for them to be attracted to certain places.
By the way, if you are new here, bonjour, I'm Deborah, a French teacher and the founder of the French language school Feel Good French. If you'd like more resources on French language, culture, and life in France, simply scan the QR code on the screen. You'll find my website, blog, newsletter, and plenty of free content. And if you are enjoying this conversation, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel in order to follow more interviews to come. And that will make my day. Merci beaucoup, and let's go back to the interview. I imagine that was a big kind of open up as a nomadic person and someone that has a long history with places, travels, just like this first encounter with a true astrology session and then opening up to this concept of astrocartography. I think it's very exciting to think of places in a different way, to think of, sometimes we have a feeling for people, we are attracted by people, the energy of people awakens something in us, but to have a discipline, that a knowledge that the places could awaken some part of you. I think for me, it was as well very exciting idea. I was like, when I discovered about astrocartography. So could you tell us a little bit about this man? I was searching for his name. I have it in my notes. I lost it. That invented astrocartography. Then when he decided to put the map of astrology in the map of the Earth, and how did this discipline was created? And could you give us a little intro? Please speak to us as if we are 12 years old, because I know it's extremely complex, and I'm really in awe with all the knowledge you have, because I know it's not easy to summarize because it's very, very complex. So could you just give us a little explanation?
Yes, so I'll get into the history and lineage of it, but the concept of astrocartography is based on astrology itself. So the concept is at the moment and location is important, of your birth, we cast a freeze frame. We take a little snapshot, like think about a Polaroid, the little photo comes out. Okay, this is the freeze of this moment, but specifically from this place. And we can't even create an astrological chart without GPS coordinates. So the location is half of the equation. It's not just your birth, but also your birth time, your exact moment, and the place. And then you generate what we call a birth chart. And it shows where every planet, planetary body, and a few math calculations were at that exact moment and place. But it's really just a 2D flat representation of what was happening, because we live on a sphere. The Earth is round. So really at that same moment, something else was happening on the other side of the world. Something else was happening in another part and another, but it's all related to your natal imprint, is what I call it, of that moment in time. And so this concept with astrocartography is the idea of where in time, all around the globe, might you experience your own astrology energy. So at the moment that you're born, in one part of the world, this is true for your astrology chart, but on the other side of the world, there's also something happening, and then another part of the world, and another part of the world. So it's really showing your birth chart as a 3D situation, and where if you were to have a time twin, let's say you were born in Omaha, Nebraska, in the United States, and then someone else at the exact same moment as you, adjusted for time zone, is born on the other side of the world. They won't have the exact same birth chart as you because they will have been viewing a different window of space. So there are certain important things that we consider in the astrology chart, and one of them is the rising sign. So if you know, okay, my sun was in Capricorn at the time I'm born, my moon, which is another important spot, your emotions and things like that, was in Gemini, so a chatty type person, and learning facts might be really nourishing to you. But the rising sign, the exact place where the sun would have risen on the day of your birth, before the ascendant, is also one of what we call the big three, a really important part of your chart, and actually the most personal part. But it's also personal to your location where you were born. So if you were born a Sagittarius rising, like I was in Colorado, in France, I'm a Gemini rising. So it'll switch based on the location. And hopefully that's enough of an explanation to give something that's very abstract a little bit of form.
What I find when you were speaking about it is that if you just stick to astrology itself, when you read the stars, you were born this way, you under those stars, and that's the situation about you. I find that there is a little bit of determinism, but when you mention astrocartography, suddenly I'm like, actually there is a little bit more room for free will, because I can decide to go willingly and activate another part of my personality if I move, no? So there is a bit more freedom, no?
Yeah, it's definitely true. And, we have the idea that if you change your location, you could change your destiny or change your life, not just because it's a new place, but because you're also activating different parts of your astrology that might be more quiet or subtle in your natal chart, your birth chart. But in this new location, it becomes loud and busy and more prominent, as events in your life or parts of your personality that you feel natural to express. I forgot to mention also, like, your question about the history. So the guy you were looking for is Jim Lewis. And in the 1970s, really late 60s into the 1980s and early 1990s, really developed a system which he named astrocartography, and that's why we use that term now. It's really a made-up word from three words: astro, as astrology, cart, which is maps, like cartography, or those kind of things, or drawing, and then graphy. So drawing maps based on your astrology is the concept.
If someone is discovering astrocartography right now and he wants to have a little idea about his own map chart, I know there is a lot of free websites out there. I'm not too sure how pertinent they are, but is there one that you can recommend for people to go and have a quick look, just to have a little idea of their lines? And
yeah, I think because of TikTok and social media and all these places, it's kind of exploded in popularity recently. And I think, those people who develop apps based on popular trends have noticed this. So there are a lot of new apps, and you'll see a lot of ads on things like Instagram and other meta platforms, and they're completely fake. I've tested a lot of them. They're the wrong map. Some people I've had coming to me where they recommended actually a place that I would view as dangerous for them. So be really careful with those. I think they're just data harvesting. They actually have also been in trouble and fined before because of data breaches and leaks, and think about how much personal information you're putting in. So the one I would recommend that's the most accurate and safe and has been around for a really long time is just astro.com. It's called Astrodienst. It comes out of Germany. They follow GDPR and more privacy laws, but also it's an actual astrologer who's made that website. So it's a more trustworthy one. That said, you may get there and be careful about, like you said, determinism. Sometimes when we click on the map and they say, oh, this will happen to you there, or this thing, they're kind of just choosing a few ideas, and they're also only looking at it one by one with each planet versus how does your whole chart, configure to each other and really what areas of life are the most affected. So take it like with a grain of salt and kind of for fun, but don't make any major decisions maybe without consulting someone.
I did it myself on my own before meeting you. And then you did it to me live when we first met, and the results were completely different. So just to say that I was kind of shocked. I was like, oh, but that's not what my free map was telling me. So maybe it's important to actually have it made professionally, or have a, like if you are really interested by knowing your lines. And so yeah, I was a bit shocked by the gap between what I have found by myself on those websites and what you told me. So what if we don't have some people don't know the time of their birth? Is that a big issue?
It is, because again, that time sensitive point shows us where your ascendant is, that rising sign. So if we don't have that within about 10 minutes, your map really changes a lot. And I can show examples of that in a little while, but it's important to have that time. If you don't have it and you can order your birth certificate and the time is on there, a long form certificate will show it in a lot of countries and places, but not all.
You've been using this time rectification technique as well in your assessments to public personality, like because you do on your YouTube video, like the astrocartography of some celebrities, and sometimes you don't have the accurate birth time, or if you speak about people from the past as well. So yeah, that's where you've been showing how to use this technique, no?
Yes. And the map can be very helpful because the map really never lies. And people will, once you get the right time, they're like, I had an Italian client once, and I said, does Finland mean a lot to you? Because he had a lot of things going to Finland that would have felt really good. And he said, that was my first international trip. I love it. It was like utopia. And so, once you find the time getting close, the map will really show you that the experiences line up as well.
You did a little intro of what's a very brief intro for us about what is exactly, how does astrocartography work. Something like a new concept that I discover with you is about the line. So for instance, could you give us an example, like a real life example on how a Venus line would compare in terms of feeling with a Saturn line, for instance, just to speak about those two lines?
Great. So a typical birth chart is divided up in 12 wedges, and those wedges represent topic areas of life. And then the planets and the planetary bodies like Venus and Saturn will land in different houses, and they will be placed there at your birth time and location, unique to you. But the planets never really change what they represent. They have almost personalities to themselves. They have very distinctive traits that astrologers have been observing over thousands and thousands of years. And so as we learn astrology, we're not just kind of like trying to be psychic or intuitive or something. We've learned what these significations are, and they don't change. So Venus relates to how we give and receive love. It's related to romance and desire. It's related to even things like diplomacy, because again, how we relate to others. It can be related to the arts and music, beauty, aesthetics, and wealth. And so those things combined, are quite different from Saturn. Saturn is cold. So I call Saturn like the taskmaster, because it's related to constriction and hard work and discipline. It can be challenges and delays and obstacles. I think of it like putting you through obstacle courses so that you can overcome challenges to achieve mastery. So if you ever watched that Karate Kid movie in the 1980s, Mr. Miyagi is how I think of Saturn. He wants you to paint the fence and hit the nail and wax on, wax off, do all these hard things to overcome the challenge, but then all of a sudden you know all the karate moves because it's in your muscle memory, right? It's something that you achieve through hard work. Versus Venus, who likes to give you nice treats, and it feels really lovely. It can even feel that you embrace like your own inner beauty, that kind of thing. Whereas Saturn is, let's embrace the hard work.
Tough love.
Tough love. Yeah, yeah. Venus is love. Saturn is tough love.
You have personally changed your location, like you decided to settle down. It's quite recent, since last February, in Bourges, in the center of France. I know this area quite well because my uncle lives there. Do you think that by doing so, like we already spoke about determinism versus free will, etc., does that actually change you, or that just makes you reveal something of your personality that's already been there? Like how do you think those changes, those territorial changes, affect the personality?
I think you're right. It will bring out, that's a nice distinction too. Is it going to make you something different, or is it really bringing out a different part of yourself? And I would say the latter, because it will take what your natural configuration is and just make it more powerful or more noticeable, or those type of events to get triggered more often. So again, remember when I was saying that ascendant, we have actually four important angles of the chart. You could think of them as north, south, east, and west, as a rough analogy. And those would be the points where, like, if your laptop was dying and you had to plug it in, something you would look for one of those 4 points because they're the most powerful points in the chart. I think of them as charging outlets. And when we look at that map, what we're actually looking at, every line is telling us where we're going to plug a planet into one of those four outlets. So really, if you have a chart where Venus is very quiet, and maybe it's in the third house or something, and it's not really going to be really active in your daily life and very much natally. When we take you to a Venus line, we're plugging it in, and all of a sudden the themes of Venus will get really, really activated. Some people will go to like a Pluto line, and all of a sudden very intense things start happening to them, and they think it's just their themselves or the place itself, but it's really not even the place itself. Some of the safest places in the world could be more dangerous or intense for certain people, just depending on where their energy is. It could even describe why maybe you go on a trip with your best friend and you love the place and they hate it because they're interacting with it energetically in a different way.
So you've been consulting hundreds of clients. I think you have quite an extensive now experience like charting people. And do you think that often people really have this intuition? Because you mentioned that we have a direct feeling for a place. And do you think that often the answers are naturally there without even having to consult the charts or the maps?
Yeah, I think like in my case, even I was going to this part of France already. It was already happening. Sometimes it's just a nice. It's like any self-discovery tool. I think of with astrology and astrocartography. You can see more about yourself of like why you might be drawn to certain places. I'll even see clients very often have a theme planet, and it might be just part of their journey through this lifetime to kind of highlight that theme in their life. And I can show some celebrity examples. For example, Barack Obama, President of the United States, and he was born on a sun line in Hawaii, a sun on the descendant. Then his mom moved him over to Jakarta, in Indonesia, for a while, and it was to a different sun line. It was actually the sun on the MC, which historically in ancient times would have been associated with kings and nation leaders. Now we can think of it as like well known or having some authority on the world or getting famous or something like that. He decided while living in Jakarta to become the president of the United States. That's where he set that goal. And then right through the Washington, D.C. area is his sun on the IC. So he was following sun lines around the world. They were activating things. And I don't know that he knows anything about astrocartography, but he's still playing out this theme for himself. So I see that often with clients. Sometimes it'll be a teacher who's teaching in different countries abroad and they're following Mercury lines, which is like very on brand for Mercury, or writers or those kind of things. So it's definitely not going to, you're not missing out if you don't know it, but just sometimes it's kind of nice to know, or nice to know that you could nudge yourself in an easier, more supportive direction versus hard work and the tough love version or something.
Well, thank you for bringing up like a concrete example with someone we all know. But when you mention his line, you also mentioned something that's the angle. Like, could you just tell us basically what do we need to know when we check like our map? So we have the planets, we have the angle, and so could you just tell us a little bit what are the things to know?
Yes. So those four angles, like I was saying, they almost kind of roughly represent east-west, north-south. The eastern side is the ascendant, and we can put the on the screen here. The eastern side would be the ascendant, where the sun would rise. So it's really associated with first impressions of you, how you're projecting your personality out into the world, how you appear to others. It can even reflect your actual physical appearance or things with your body. And it's the in-house of self. So it's really about how you're putting yourself out in the world. The midheaven would be the top of the sun's path on that day of your birth from that location. So if you're born really high latitude, it was going to be very low, right? But if you're born near the equator, it'll be different. But that highest point in the sky would be called the midheaven. And that's one of the other four angles. And think about if you can see something at the top of the sky. This is the one I was giving the example with the sun on the MC. It's up in the sky. It's visible to everyone. It's public life. It can be your career, your social standing, how you are perceived and seen in public, how you appear in public. Then the sun would keep going on its path down the ecliptic and will hit the descendant. The descendant is what we associate with the western horizon, where the sun would set, but it's also what type of important relationships we bring in. So romantic partners, business partners, sometimes it can be important client, best friend, people you have a commitment to, those people we're magnetizing in toward us, and to help us, reflect certain kind of energy. The bottom of heaven, so the opposite side of that top part, is the IC. It's an old Latin phrase, imo Chile, and it means bottom of heaven, literally. But think about now we've seen the horizon line. Above the sky is the public part of the chart. Down below that descendant, as we get down to the IC, that's your home life, private life, who you are when no one sees you. It can be your ancestry, it can be your family, and just kind of that core part of life that's not on display in public. It's in the underworld, down below the horizon. So it's, considered the basement. So those are really different topic areas of life. And if you go off social media and somebody says, go to a sun line, well, imagine again, like there are very different topics that we're going to activate. Are you wanting to get famous, or are you going to want to retire? Are you wanting to get married, or are you wanting to, assert yourself and kind of give yourself a new fresh start or something like that? We can activate different things with those different angles. Those angles are the ones are the charging elements. So
yeah, it's not as easy. There is no like a true shortcut. And yeah, if someone asks you the question, where should I go, where should I live, you can't answer straight away. You mentioned to me like the most important part is to wonder what do you want right now, what is your priority, what is the cycle that you are right now experiencing in life, no? Because I guess like we have like chapters, period of life, no? Like the artist, I just been to see the Matisse Museum, and I like how artists have period, like the period of colors. So yeah, it's a bit like we have a period when we want to activate certain things. So I think a lot of people who are watching us right now are in this maybe retirement period, a period when they want to relax, put themselves in priority after having spending a life of hard labor. So for those people that are watching us, like how would you orientate them? They ask for a consultation, and like they are starting, they hesitate where to go. They're like Italy, France, Spain, or Mexico. Like what's the orientation you give them?
Yeah, especially for somebody in that transition of, okay, I want to retire, but usually people want to kind of stay active, or they really tend to tell me they want to tap into local community and make a new friend group and that kind of. So remember when I said in the chart, those 12 wedges, those wedge shapes are topic areas of life. So when I look at the map, I consider it to be a geography cheat sheet to the new chart, the way that the chart's going to relocate. That cheat sheet will tell me, okay, we're plugging this planet into an outlet. Which one are we going to amplify? But we're also shifting where those planets landed in the topic areas of life. So we wouldn't really want to, get the house of work and daily routine in a very, very active state or something like that, unless, the person wanted to start a new business after they retire or something. And we might want to accentuate the 5th house of fun and hobbies and pleasure and enjoyment and romance and things, just the easy parts of life, and to enjoy those kinds of things. Or the 11th house of friend groups and book club and spiritual groups, or whatever kind of communities we join. Or the 3rd house of our nearby neighbors and acquaintances and things like that. We pay attention to all of those things. And if we can find a nice, comfortable IC line, remember that bottom of heaven, to accentuate the home life. And even just exploring the inner core of self, because it's not like life ends or we stop self-development, when we get older or retire or something. I'm 47, and it's like endless. We're always learning more about ourselves. So that can be a fun part of self-discovery too, is accentuating the IC, or that lower part of the chart as well. Plus, thinking into the future, it's great for settling down, and even, this might sound morbid, but it's associated with burial and things like that. So it's that underground part of the chart. So as a place to settle down, and I can show some celebrity examples of that too, like where people have landed at that new spot that gets activated in their chart. People like David Bowie, for instance. He was born on a Venus midheaven line, a career in the arts and music, and again, like attraction and desire. He was known for like sex, drugs, and rock and roll and all that when he was young. But it's on the midheaven. Remember that top part of the public part of the sky. It even rules things like fashion and wealth, like I said too. So he was really, really fortunate in his birth to be in that line of work. And then when he didn't really retire, he even made an album right before he died. But his place of like rest and feeling like in a cocoon, I actually lived near him, so I know where he ended up doing that. And it was in upstate New York in Woodstock. And he went to his Venus ascending line. So he went to one that kind of cooled down the idea of focus on career, and went to one that was like enjoying life's pleasures and his romantic partner when he, you know, with his wife who was from Somalia, where he had some major lines going through Somalia, and he was dumbstruck when he met her. He said it was the only time he was ever speechless, and it was his son MC Mars and his spirit line. So he had all this energy right in her birthplace, and then met her and retired to this, not retired but kind of slowed down onto a really nice comfortable line like the one we were discussing there.
So as you mentioned, his partner that's from Somalia, it reminded me that in order to channel, to connect with the territory, we don't necessarily need to be in the place, but there are other ways to activate. When I told you that my partner is from New Zealand, you say, like that's kind of a way to connect with this territory. And that will lead us to the next part of this conversation, which is a concept, the concept you mentioned of remote activation.
So, like you said, you are remotely activating your energy sometimes when you meet somebody that comes from one of your areas that's very active, and that can resonate really just strongly with you. You meet somebody, oh my God, that was fate or something. It might be related to your astrology. And I see this all the time with couples readings. I do couples readings, and we'll compare both of their charts, and they'll often have like Venus lines in each other's birthplaces, or something important on the descendant. Remember that descendant is important relationships. If they have a really strong intellectual rapport, maybe it was Mercury on the descendant, and they connected through a great conversation or something. It's very, very common, and it'll be really close to their birthplace very often. In fact, a lot of my clients, I would say 90%, I'll have a line in their birthplace because they're submitting that on the form, so I know, oh, they're from my whatever line. And then oftentimes they'll have a line in my birthplace. Like you even have a sun line very close to my birthplace in Colorado. And it's like this natural rapport, easily rapport. I think you even have some other Coloradans you like. So yeah, it's the idea again of this is your energy being wrapped around the globe. If you're from Los Angeles and you travel to Paris a lot, when you go to Paris, you don't cease to exist in Los Angeles. You can even sense that you still exist there. But it's true, it just tends to sometimes be dormant for us. So the idea of remote activation is putting conscious focus on the place where you have some energy you might want to really wake up and activate. And you can do it through things like a jewelry. I'll wear things like that I've bought in certain places, or you can order it on Etsy or something if you can't travel. But yeah, or foods, or music, and literature, learning about the history, watching documentaries. It can be all ways to connect with your own energy that already exists, and you just kind of wake it up. I've seen clients get job offers, connect with romantic partners that feels like out of the blue, but they know it's not because they were consciously activating it, and they'll email me so excited, like that kind of.
I love this idea of remote activation because I think there are a lot of people who are watching us. They are still in their home country, dreaming. They are like you. They are francophile. They are dreaming of moving to France, but there are some roadblocks because they have parents to look after, or they have matters that have to be fixed before they could actually move. I know that some people reach me because they want French classes so they can feel the connection with the culture through the language before moving. So I'd like to go a little bit more in depth on how do we activate ourselves, how do we connect ourselves with the energy of the place. Before this conversation today, you mentioned that I actually have a line important where you are, because you are calling us from right now Alexandria in Egypt. So before the call, I searched in my house and I was like, what is Egyptian in my house? So I brought this book next to me, and I made a little, one day I went to a perfume workshop and we made the Cleopatra perfume. I thought, okay, I'll do that. Is that the right way to do a remote activation?
Exactly, especially like you did, put it in front of yourself or smell it, or it's the idea of making it conscious. So you can't just like set a VPN to Singapore or something, you know what I mean? Like, because you'll forget about it instantly. But I'll put, a screensaver on my phone of the place, or the same with your computer. put some images up wherever you can. Some people have the TV where you can change the images, put something on there. So anything to remind you. Also, social media. Follow beautiful hotels or photographers or tourism offices, so that oh yeah that place, oh yeah that place. When you're scrolling and you're just kind of mindless, oh it's coming to your awareness. But language, especially because you have to concentrate on it, is a perfect way to remotely activate because whether they're taking a lesson from you or practicing or writing it out, it's connecting to the location itself. It's activating all kinds of your parts of your brain when you learn languages too. So it's a really great way to consciously do it versus it just kind of being something that becomes so normal we forget or something.
What was your way to do it as a Francophile before living in France? How did you remotely activated the French, the French in you?
Yes, definitely language, but also, like I said, I'll get jewelry or things like that that I wear regularly. So that's another one. But also music. My
Hmm.
favorite hobby is singing. And when I lived in New York, we had a band, and growing up in church, you do a lot of music. But in Bourges, I have a band. I just sing with a jazz trio, and so learning the French lyrics to song, which is also a really nice way to learn.
Les
I think
paroles.
just a really great way to connect to the place itself. So France has great music and different genres. So
I think there are basically everything connected to the culture as well, like watching the movies, as you mentioned, the music, or even cooking, no? If you cook like
yes,
a French dish.
yes,
This is not a wine, this is a coffee, but I was just saying that um, the wine is what is the closest drink to the soil, to the territory, no? We say that we can feel the soil of a place through this drink, cette boisson, no?
yes, and it's something that you can find at the grocery store or the liquor store or the wine shop in the United
Yeah.
States. So a great place to connect. A great way, yeah.
But what about the intensity? Because you've been doing remote activation. Do you think that remote activation could become as strong as being in the place itself, or it's never as strong as being physically in the place?
I think it's what we call a mitigation, a way to sort of offset, especially like you said, if you have a commitment to take care of certain people or you can't leave the place right away. Or sometimes I'll have, like a doctor who's just signed a contract in a new place, or, they're a lawyer and they have a law firm that's very established and it would be very hard to leave. And it would take a lot of planning. What we'll do is work on the mitigating with remote activation, but also a little technique we call local space, which is our lines and showing up in a little bit different way than how I described. Again, it's very complicated, so I don't want to make people, fall asleep with it. But there are ways that we can also use your current place as well as some remote places to kind of like just help boost things. I even had one guy, he's a builder, a very successful builder, and he was considering building his entire house with remotely activated
Wow,
materials from his
crazy.
luckier spots because he had kids and he just can't move or enough, so that kind of thing. Yeah, so some people really get into it, and some people, it's careful not to be obsessed with it because, you can overthink anything, and this one could be easily something to overthink.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, it really does work. I have countless stories of it working for me, and I've just seen it work so much for clients that
Can you tell us one of the most striking story for you?
yeah, I mean, sometimes it'll be related to people that I've met, right, in a certain place, and they'll be from one of my lines. Those are classic. But like for instance, even I have a like story from a few years ago where I realized I hadn't seen a Finnish person's chart from Finland, and I used to live in Norway for a couple of years. I've done a lot of European clients, but I was like just thinking one day, oh wow, I've never seen a Finland chart, and as far as a professional client or anything. So I said, okay, it'll be Finland week. And then I actually learned so much about Finland I had no idea. Like you said, watch documentaries. I followed a lot on the social media. I started learning about Lapland and, this kind of stuff. What's the culture? What's some of the language, like learn a few phrases. What are they eating? These kind of things. So doing a lot. But day 3, I had a booking from online, just complete strangers book with me for a couples reading. And they were just so delightful. We connected really well. They were literally born on my lines there, the same city. And then we had a great session. They turned out to be digital nomads, so I consult with them regularly for the things that they're planning, but they also recommended me in Finnish to all their social media and friends and everything in Finland. So I read regularly for years now, and I still haven't visited Finland. It's on my list, but so having never been there, I've connected to Finland
Yeah.
through the people. So that's the people is a really big one. Um, but again, even in filmmaking, sometimes you'll connect to the story place. So like I'll have like an important line in the place of the setting of the script or something like that, or the people. And I was working on that film. Like I said, it was a very rural part of Oklahoma. So even leading up to working around it, it was on my Chiron IC line, which is actually related to like old wounds and like traumas and things like that is Chiron on the IC around ancestors and things like that. And the movie is about generational trauma. And so it was really interesting to have the place that we're shooting in this very, very remote part of Oklahoma in the Osage Nation be connected to my astrocartography as well. I've also had like one I send you the map, but it's like I met a guy in the Sahara, Moroccan Sahara desert, right in the middle of a sand dune on a Pluto line, right? It was very magnetic, little dalliance for a few months. We started dating. We just saw each other a sand dune, and we're like totally magnetized toward each other because Pluto can be very intense and magnetic. But he was from my Venus descending line in Lyon, so we met there. But he was from
Français. He was a Frenchman.
Yes, like smoking hot, like very fun. We're still good friends. This is years and years ago, but we still feel like deeply connected because of the type of energy that got activated, not only by that place, but his remote line that was my Venus, which again, remember romance and desire and
Sounds like a movie, this story.
it felt like it too.
And I was wondering because you mentioned like all the different lines according to what we want to activate. So yourself, imagine, let's say, well, you work for yourself, but imagine that you have a job interview and you want to activate, something more professional, like clarity, and like, would you do some remote activation to activate certain part of yourself? Like, do you do it on a daily basis or?
You can do, yes, definitely. Targeting is really good because, again, it's about consciousness. So if you try to do too many things at once, it gets scattered. But if you have, okay, I want a job interview, I would look, first of all, because the second house, remember those wedges, is related to our money and material resources. The sixth house is our daily work and our daily routine, but then that MC and usually the 10th house will be related to career. So look at if you have any planets in those houses, then look on the map to see where you can match them up to activate those sort of things. And sometimes I'll even show clients where they have those lines so they can apply to, if there are writers, like look at publishers or agents where you have these kind of lines that can activate those parts of your chart. So that theme is important.
I was just thinking of intuition, and for instance, when I think of people's house, like, the people I know, there is sometimes like country theme according to the room. So I know that my stepmother, she's got actually, I think of it because of the Book of Egypt. She's got Egyptian painting in the living room, and I think there is sometimes people have topics by room. So maybe subconsciously, it's something that we are, no?
Absolutely. Like me, she might see her map and then go, no wonder I'm so, attracted or drawn to this place or Egypt or something like that. And Egypt is a fascinating place. It's not a place I would technically move because it's a Neptune line for me. And it's a little bit like hard to work and a little bit ethereal and spiritual. It's not necessarily financially fortunate to be on Neptune unless you're working in filmmaking, which I have filmed here before. But for me, for my goals, like of enhancing home life, of just feeling the support of the universe, getting more involved with the arts and leisure and pleasure, and toning down all the stress that I used to have in career and things. Like that's one of the major reasons that France works so well for me, because all that energy matches there.
Thank you so much for watching till the end. And if you enjoyed this conversation with Kim, please give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss part 2, which is coming very soon. Kim will reveal the unexpected French town she chose after years of searching, and why she chose a smaller city over a big one, and what happened when she finally moved there. And I'd love to know, is there a place you've always felt drawn to, even if you couldn't explain why? Tell me in the comments and see you in part 2. À bientôt! C'était Déborah.